The night did not feel dangerous at first. It only felt quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you hear your own thoughts louder than the world around you. That was the moment Sandra Bullock decided she needed air. Not from the room she was in. Not from the people who still talked about tomorrow's scenes. She needed air from somewhere else. Somewhere real. Somewhere silent. She looked at the clock. It was 11:47 at night. The kind of hour when most people sleep and the rest pretend they are fine. She took her jacket, pushed her hair behind her ear, and slipped out of the back exit of the hotel. No one noticed. No one asked. She liked it that way. She wanted to feel small for a while. Invisible. Free. What she did not know was that someone had noticed. Keanu Reeves had been sitting in the lobby, not talking, just listening to the room's energy, when he saw a reflection in the glass, Sandra's reflection, walking out alone. No security, no assistant, no driver. He did not call her name. He did not stop her. He did not even stand up right away. He just watched the door slowly close behind her, and then he sighed, stood up, and followed. Not because she needed controlling, not because he wanted to be a hero, but because the night is never as safe as people pretend it is, and some people deserve silent protection, not attention. The street outside was dim. The shadows were long. The air was cold enough to bite a little. Sandra walked without a destination, just letting her steps choose the path. Every few seconds, she looked up at the sky, trying to remember the last time she saw stars without cameras around her. Keanu stayed behind her, far enough not to be noticed, close enough to interfere if something went wrong. He walked like a shadow, silent steps, steady breath. No rush, no fear, just purpose. Sandra turned right at a closed bookstore. She paused there, looking at the faded paper signs still taped to the dusty glass. She smiled a little. She had once dreamed of owning a small bookstore, before films and fame, before red carpets and award nights. In another life, maybe she would have stood behind a counter, selling stories instead of acting in them. She did not know that from across the street under a broken street lamp. Keanu watched the same moment. He understood that kind of silence. The silence that is not empty, but full of what life could have been. He would have stayed, unseen the whole night if everything had stayed calm. But the night never stays calm for long. A man in a dark jacket started walking from the opposite side of the street. His steps were slow at first, then quicker, then matching Sandra's pace. He did not look like someone in a hurry. He looked like someone who had suddenly found a target. Sandra did not notice him right away. She was still lost in thought. But Keanu noticed. He shifted closer, not too fast, not too late. His face stayed calm, but his eyes sharpened. He had seen that kind of walk before, in studios, in alleys, in places where silence can suddenly break. Sandra finally sensed something. Maybe a sound. Maybe a vibration of footsteps behind her. She turned slightly, but the man looked away. She kept walking, but now her heartbeat carried an extra note. Not fear, just alertness. Keanu began closing the distance, but he still stayed silent. He did not want to embarrass her. He did not want her to feel watched. He only wanted her to stay unaware of a danger that would never touch her. The man kept following. Sandra walked toward a corner where the streetlights flickered. She did not like the feeling now. The quiet had changed shape. It was no longer peaceful. It was waiting. She finally turned around fully, and the man stopped. He didn't speak. He just stared. Then he started walking again. Faster. Sandra stepped back, ready to move, ready to run if she had to. But before anything could happen, another figure stepped between them. Keanu, silent, calm, still. He did not say a word. He just existed in the way only a man without anger or fear can exist. The stranger stopped. He looked at Keanu, and for a moment there was a quiet exchange of energy. No threat, no shouting, no argument. Just a silent conclusion. This is not happening tonight. The man turned and walked away. No fight. No noise. No scene. Sandra stared at Keanu, stunned. Not because he saved her, but because he was already there before she even asked. "Were you following me?" she asked, softly. Keanu's answer was a gentle half-smile. "Just making sure the night stayed kind to you." There was no joke in his voice. No pressure. Just respect. Sandra breathed out slowly. She was not embarrassed. She was not angry. She was just surprised that someone could care without trying to own the moment. She looked at him and said, "You could have told me." He shook his head. "You wanted to be alone. I just wanted to make sure you were not alone in danger." That was the thing about Keanu. He never tried to be the center of the story. He only tried to remove the dark edges around it. They started walking back together, not talking, not rushing, just letting silence be kind again. There was no romance in the air, no dramatic confession, just two people who understood that care does not always need words, and protection does not always need noise. Sandra looked at him once more and said quietly, "I thought I was alone tonight," Keanu replied. "You were." But not unprotected. The night kept moving. The streets stayed empty, but something had shifted. Not in the world, in the heart. And the night went back to sleep. The walk back to the hotel was slow, and neither of them tried to break the silence. It was not an awkward silence. It was the kind of silence that comes after something meaningful happens, the kind that lets the mind replay every moment in slow motion. Sandra kept her hands inside her jacket pockets, still feeling the cold night air on her face, still thinking about the stranger who followed her and the man who protected her without saying a word. Keanu walked half a step behind her, not beside her. He did not try to look heroic. He did not try to take credit. He did not even ask if she was okay. He let her breathe. He let her own the moment. He simply stayed there, like a quiet anchor that kept the night from becoming something darker. When they reached the hotel entrance, Sandra paused before going in. She turned to him and asked, "How long were you following me?" Keanu gave a simple answer. "From the start." She raised an eyebrow. "So you saw me leave?" "Yes. And you didn't call out?" "You looked like you wanted silence more than company." Sandra nodded because he was right. She had wanted silence. She just didn't know silence could be dangerous too. They entered the hotel lobby. The lights were warm. The air smelled like polished wood and quiet money, and the whole place was still. Most people in the building were asleep. The world outside felt far away now, like a dream that wasn't finished. Sandra turned again before going toward the elevator. "Why did you do it?" she asked. Keanu looked at her, not with intensity, but with honesty. "Because I've seen too many nights turn into stories people never wanted to remember." Sandra held his gaze. There was something in his voice that felt deeper than the moment. A history, a memory, maybe even pain. She wanted to ask more, but something in his eyes told her not to. He was not trying to impress her. He was trying to protect something inside himself, too. The elevator doors opened. Sandra stepped in. Keanu stayed outside. "Good night," she said softly. "Good night," he replied. But just before the doors closed, she leaned forward and said, "Thank you." He shook his head gently. "You don't have to thank me." The doors closed, and the night should have ended there. But it didn't. Because even when the danger was gone, something else had started, something neither of them had planned. Sandra went to her room, but sleep did not arrive with her. She kept replaying the night, the footsteps, the cold street, the moment she turned and saw Keanu already there, as if he was always meant to appear at that exact second. She sat on the edge of the bed and whispered to herself, "Why does quiet kindness feel louder than anything else?" Across the hotel, Keanu sat in his room too. He didn't turn on the TV, he didn't use his phone. He simply sat with his thoughts. He had done what he always did, stayed in the background, protected without asking for attention. But tonight felt different, not because he helped someone, but because someone actually noticed. He remembered the stranger on the street, the look in his eyes, the silent tension, the way danger can approach softly on quiet footsteps. He had seen that before in places where cameras never reached, and names never mattered. He closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. The world called him, calm, controlled, peaceful. But peace is not born from calm days. It is built from storms survived. An hour passed, then two, and neither of them slept. When the clock hit 2 in the morning, Sandra stood up and walked to the window. The city was still glowing with scattered lights, like 1,000 small worlds refusing to sleep. She wondered how many people in those windows were alone, not by choice, but by circumstance. Then she wondered how many were alone even when they were surrounded. There was a quiet knock on her door. Not loud, not rushed. Just one knock. She opened it slowly, and there he was, Keanu, not in panic, not in drama, just standing there with a soft expression. Sandra looked at him, more curious than surprised. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. He nodded once. "No," she stepped aside. "Come in." He walked in, and the room felt different. Not heavy, not dramatic. Just honest. They sat on the floor near the window. No drinks, no music, just the soft hum of the city outside and the soft weight of a shared experience. Sandra spoke first. "I wasn't scared at first. I just wanted to breathe. But when that man kept walking behind me, I suddenly felt tired. Not afraid. Just tired of always being the one who has to stay alert." Keanu listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't turn her feelings into a lesson. He just let them exist, she continued. "And then you showed up. And for the first time that night, I felt safe. Not because I couldn't protect myself, but because someone else cared enough to watch my back without trying to control my choices." Keanu took a breath, then said something simple. "Everyone deserves to feel safe without having to ask for it." The room went silent again, but it was not empty. It was full of something. Unspoken, not romance, not pity. Something deeper, mutual. Respect, mutual quiet. The kind of connection that forms when two people understand life is not built only on things set out. Loud. The clock hit 3 in the morning. The night was still alive. Sandra looked at him and said, "You have done this before, haven't you? Protected someone quietly." Keanu looked away for a moment. "Not to hide something, but to respect it." "Yes," he said softly, "and no one knew? That's the point." She nodded slowly. "There are people who show kindness loudly, and there are people who show it silently. And sometimes the silent kind is the one that changes the world most deeply." A moment later, Sandra smiled. "You know most people would have posted it online by now, or told a talk show, or tried to look like a savior." Keanu smiled back. "That is why most people are not really saving anyone. They are saving their image." Sandra laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it was true. They stayed like that, on the floor, near the night window, not speaking much, but not needing words. The world outside slept, but two people stayed awake, not because they were afraid of the night, but because they understood it. And the night, for once, felt safe. The night kept moving forward, but the world inside that hotel room remained still. It was 3:30 in the morning now, and yet neither Sandra nor Keanu showed any sign of wanting the moment to end. They were not talking much, but something about their silence felt more meaningful than any long conversation could ever be. It was the kind of silence that did not push, did not demand, did not force anything. It just existed with honesty. Sandra leaned her head lightly against the wall. She looked tired. Not from the night, but from the kind of life that never lets a person rest completely. The kind of life where even when you stop moving, your mind keeps running. "You know," she said softly, "people feel safe around you even when you don't say anything." Keanu looked at her with calm eyes. "Maybe it's because I don't try to control anything," he said. "I just stay close enough in case something goes wrong." Sandra thought about that. She had met so many people in her life who wanted to protect her, but most of them wanted to be seen while doing it. They wanted credit, recognition, praise. They wanted to be known as the one who saved her. But Keanu never wanted to be seen. He wanted the danger to disappear, not the spotlight to arrive. That was different. That was rare. They watched the window again. The city lights shimmered like quiet reflections of things people never say out loud. Small cars moved slowly down the road. A few shadows crossed the street. The world was breathing softly, as if the night was holding its breath before the sunrise. Sandra finally asked the question she had been carrying in her chest. "Why did you stay, even after we reached the hotel? You could have gone to sleep. You didn't have to knock on my door." Keanu looked down for a second before answering. "Because sometimes the danger does not follow the body. It follows the mind. and I felt like maybe you were still holding something." Sandra blinked, surprised that he understood without her saying anything. "So, you came here to make sure I wasn't alone in the aftershock," she said. Keanu nodded once. "Most people think the moment of danger is the hardest part," he said. "But the hardest part is the quiet that comes after, when the brain keeps replaying what could have happened." Sandra stared at him, wondering how he could read the exact emotion inside her without asking a single question. "You've lived through a lot, haven't you?" she asked gently. Keanu did not answer immediately. He was not avoiding the question. He was just deciding how much of the truth belonged to this moment. "Life teaches some people loudly," he finally said, "and others quietly. I guess I was taught both ways." He did not explain further. He didn't need to. Some truths don't need details to be understood. The room grew quieter, softer, more honest. Sandra looked down at her hands. "People always think strength is about standing in front," she said. "But tonight I realized something. Sometimes strength is standing behind someone and letting them walk on their own until they need you." Keanu smiled slightly. "That's because real strength has nothing to prove." She nodded slowly. That sentence stayed in the air like a gentle truth. Sandra shifted position, pulling her knees up slightly. "You know what the strangest part is?" she said. "I didn't feel stupid for leaving alone. I didn't feel weak when you stepped in. I didn't feel judged at all. I just felt safe." Keanu looked at her, not with pride, but with understanding. "Safety should never feel like a punishment," he said. "It should feel like respect." That sentence touched something deep inside her. She didn't expect a response like that. She expected a joke or a simple line like, "You're welcome." But Keanu never chose the easy words. He chose the true ones. The clock now read 4:15 in the morning, but neither of them looked tired. They were awake in a different way. Awake not in the body, but in the soul. Sandra stood up and walked to the small table where a kettle and 2 cups rested. "Do you drink tea at this hour?" she asked. Keanu leaned his head back, thinking. "I drink whatever lets the night feel less heavy," he said. She smiled and made tea for both of them. No sugar, no milk, just warm water and calm heat. They sat again, holding the cups the way people hold something that matters but could spill if handled wrong. The steam rose softly between them like a quiet thought. Neither of them said aloud. After a while, Sandra asked something unexpected. "If I didn't see you tonight, would you still have walked me all the way back?" Keanu answered without hesitation. "Yes, even if I never found out? Especially if you never found out." Sandra looked down again, and this time she felt something behind her eyes. Not tears of sadness, not fear, something else. Something like gratitude, but deeper. Something like relief, but older. She whispered, "That kind of kindness is rare." Keanu shook his head slightly. "It's not rare," he said. "It's just silent. And people don't hear it because they've forgotten to listen." A few minutes passed before Sandra spoke again. "When you walked behind me tonight, did you ever think I might not like it?" Keanu nodded. "I thought about it. But protection without permission is not protection. It's control. So I stayed far enough. I let you lead the walk. I only stepped in when danger stepped in first." Sandra breathed out slowly, and for the first time that night, she felt something inside her unclench, something she didn't even know was tight. The hotel room was still. Their cups were empty. The sky outside was darker now, not because the night deepened, but because the world was slowly shifting toward dawn. Then Sandra said something almost whispered. "Do you ever wish someone had done that for you? Followed you when you walked alone?" Keanu did not answer right away. But when he did, it was soft. "Everyone has walked alone at least once in life," he said. "But not everyone had someone watching their back. That is why I do it for others. So the story changes for someone, even if it never changed for me." Sandra did not speak after that, because there are some sentences that deserve silence after them, not because they are heavy, but because they are true. 4:35 a.m., the city was now a little quieter. Night was almost over, but something had happened in those hours that could not be undone. A new kind of trust, not built on words, not built on promises, built on a silent act of care no one asked for. But someone deeply needed. Sandra leaned back again, her voice barely above a whisper. This night could have gone very differently. Keanu nodded. But it didn't. Because of you, he shook his head. Because kindness arrived before danger did. She smiled again, not wide, just real. They sat a few more minutes in the fading night, not planning the next moment, not forcing a goodbye, just letting the night complete its own story before sleep arrived. And slowly, quietly, without either of them noticing exactly when, the fear of the night had turned into peace, and the peace had turned into understanding, not love, not drama, something better. Human connection, built from silence, protected by respect, and sealed by kindness. The night kept stretching forward, but now it carried a different kind of quiet. Not the kind that feels empty, not the kind that feels unsafe. This quiet felt full, like the space between two people who understand each other without needing to explain anything. It was now 4:50 in the morning, and Sandra and Keanu were still sitting on the floor near the window, both awake, both calm, both present in a way most people never are at that hour. The sky outside was no longer black. A soft blue line had begun to form along the edge of the city, hinting at the first trace of morning. The streetlights were still on, but their glow looked softer now, like they were being slowly replaced by real light. Sandra looked out the window and whispered, "Have you ever noticed that the night always feels longer when you are not okay, but feels shorter when someone stays with you?" Keanu listened, then nodded. Nights measure people, not time. She turned to him, surprised by how simple and honest that sentence felt. She had always thought of night as a space, a clock, a dark stretch of hours. But he was right. Night was not measured by minutes. It was measured by the weight on your chest and by who helped you carry it. A small silence followed, but it was gentle. Then Sandra asked something she had been turning over in her mind. "When you saw me leave, what did you think I was running from?" Keanu answered without pause, as if he had already asked himself the same question earlier. "Not danger, not people, just noise." Sandra let out a soft breath. "That's exactly it. I wasn't running away. I was just trying to escape everything that keeps talking even when I don't want to hear it." "And did walking help you?" Keanu asked. "For a while, yes," she said, until the quiet turned into something else. Until I didn't know if it was peace or risk. Keanu looked at her, and his tone softened even more. "That's why I followed. Not to interrupt your peace, just to interrupt the risk." Those words did something to her. They felt like a warm blanket on cold thoughts. She had known many people who tried to stop her from being alone, but very few who understood why she needed to be alone first. A few minutes passed. The room felt safe. Even the shadows on the walls seemed calm now. Then Sandra asked a quiet question. "When did you become like this?" Keanu blinked once. "Like what?" "Like someone who protects quietly. Someone who reads danger before it speaks. Someone who doesn't need thanks to feel complete." For a moment, he did not speak. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because some answers do not belong to the present. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady. "Life teaches you who you are when no one is looking. The rest is just acting." Sandra stared at him, the weight of that truth settling slowly into her chest. He said it like it was nothing, but it was everything. She sat up straighter and asked, "Did someone teach you that?" Keanu looked away toward the window again. "Pain teaches it. Loss teaches it. The world teaches it when you have no one to explain it to you. Then one day you realize kindness is the only thing that makes pain worth something." Sandra felt the room stop for a moment. Nothing moved. Not the air. Not her breath. Not even her heartbeat, because that sentence was not about the night. It was about life. But before she could respond, something unexpected happened. A loud noise echoed from outside the hallway. Not a scream. Not a fight. Just a heavy sound like something had fallen or someone had stumbled hard against a wall. Both of them froze. The peaceful moment broke. Sandra glanced at Keanu, and he was already listening, already alert, already shifting from calm to ready. There was no fear in his eyes, only awareness. He stood up slowly, then walked toward the door. Sandra followed him with her eyes and whispered, "Do you think someone's in trouble?" Keanu didn't answer. He placed his hand gently on the door handle but didn't open it yet. He was listening for footsteps, voices, clues, anything that told him what kind of situation waited on the other side. A second sound came. A muffled voice. Not angry. Not shouting. More like someone trying not to panic. Sandra stood up too. "Should we call someone?" Keanu shook his head slightly. "Not yet. Let's see first." He opened the door slowly and stepped into the hallway. The lights were dim. The hotel had gone into night mode. Everything looked calm, but something was off. A luggage cart was tipped over near the elevator. A suitcase had burst open, and clothes were scattered on the floor. A man was kneeling beside it, breathing fast, shaking slightly, trying to gather everything but dropping half of it. His hands looked unsteady, like he wasn't just tired, like he was scared. Sandra came closer, but she stayed a step behind Keanu, letting him lead the moment. Keanu spoke first, his voice low, not loud, not aggressive. "Are you okay?" The man looked up, startled. His eyes were red. Not angry red, exhausted red, hopeless red. "I'm fine," he said quickly. "I just slipped." But the suitcase wasn't what drew Keanu's attention. It was the man's hand. It was trembling too hard for a simple slip. That wasn't a person who fell. That was a person who had been holding something inside too long. Sandra stepped forward gently. "Do you need help?" The man looked from her to Keanu, and his eyes widened in recognition. Not fan excitement. More like shock. Like he couldn't believe the night had sent them instead of anyone else. You're Sandra Bullock," he whispered. She didn't confirm it. She didn't smile. She just said, "We're just two people asking if you're okay." And that line seemed to break something inside him. He covered his face with both hands and took a shaky breath. "I wasn't going to do anything stupid," he said. I just lost my job today. I came here for a fresh start and everything fell apart before it even began." Keanu glanced at Sandra. No words needed. They both understood. This was not a dangerous man. This was a tired man, a broken man, a man who didn't need charity. Just a moment of humanity. Keanu knelt down and helped him pick up the clothes without a single question. He didn't talk. He just helped. Sandra set the suitcase upright and zipped it slowly. The man watched in disbelief as two people the world called stars did something. The world called small, but the soul called everything. When they were done, Keanu looked at him and said gently, "You don't have to go through the night alone." The man nodded, tears held in his eyes but not released. He whispered, "Thank you," but Keanu just shook his head, the same way he did earlier with Sandra. "You don't have to thank anyone for being human." Sandra and Keanu walked back to her room in silence again. Not the heavy kind, the meaningful kind. Sandra exhaled slowly. "You knew he wasn't a threat. Pain doesn't walk like danger," Keanu replied. "It walks like exhaustion." They entered the room again. The sky outside had turned lighter now. Morning was not far. Sandra sat down and said quietly, "That moment, it felt like a mirror. I left the hotel tonight because I was tired too. Not the same kind of tired, but tired." Keanu nodded. People don't need to have the same story to understand each other. They only need the same silence inside. Sandra looked at him and her expression softened completely. "You protected me tonight," she said. "And then you protected a stranger too." Keanu shook his head again. Kindness doesn't choose names. It only chooses timing. The first light of dawn entered the room. The night was almost over, but it had changed three people in three different ways. The man in the hallway found proof the world still had gentle edges. Sandra found peace in a silence that didn't hurt. Keanu found purpose in doing what he always did, protect without needing applause. The night had not been about fear. It had been about presence, and presence, when given instead of spoken, becomes the purest kind of kindness there is. The first light of morning slowly touched the edges of the sky, and the city began to yawn awake. It was no longer night, but it was not fully morning either. It was the in-between hour, the soft hour, The kind of time when people rethink their lives before the world starts moving again. Sandra and Keanu were still in the room, but something had shifted inside both of them. The long night, the walk, the danger, the silence, the stranger in the hallway, all of it had connected in a way that felt strangely complete. Sandra sat quietly, knees pulled close, watching the soft sunrise through the glass. "It's strange," she said. "I left the hotel last night because I felt alone. And now, after everything that happened, I don't feel alone anymore, even though nothing huge happened. No speech, no crowd, no big moment, just small things. But they felt big." Keanu nodded. "Most things that change us are small until we look back." She thought about that. She realized there was truth in it. Nothing dramatic had happened. And yet everything inside her felt slightly different now. Lighter, steadier, safer. "You know what I keep thinking?" she said. "If you hadn't followed me, none of this would have happened. Not the protection, not the conversation, not the moment with that man. The night would have been just another night." Keanu looked at her and replied calmly, "That's the power of showing up quietly. You never know how many stories change because you stayed close." That sentence stayed in the room like a soft echo. A small silence passed, and then Sandra asked one last question, almost shyly. "If I walk alone again one night, would you follow again?" Keanu did not smile. He did not joke. He simply answered in a way only he could. "I won't walk in front of you. I won't walk beside you unless you ask. But yes, I'll always walk behind you if the night looks unsafe." Sandra felt something warm rise in her chest. Not love, not attraction. Trust. Pure, quiet trust. She whispered. "Thank you." Keanu shook his head gently. "You don't have to thank someone for caring." The sun finally broke through the clouds, spilling light into the room. The night was gone. The danger was gone. But the meaning remained. Sandra looked at him and said softly, "This night will stay with me for a long time." Keanu gave the final answer of the night. Calm, steady, true. Night's end. But the way someone treated you in the dark, that stays. And with that, the first real morning light filled the room. Not dramatic, not loud, just kind. Morning had fully arrived now. The room was no longer lit by shadows or streetlights, but by calm daylight that slowly erased the heaviness of the night. Sandra and Keanu had been awake for hours, yet neither of them felt restless. There was a strange peace in the air, the kind that only comes when something inside you has finally settled without needing to be explained. Sandra stood and stretched a little, feeling the quiet softness in her body. She looked at the window again, watching the sky turn from soft orange to clear, pale blue. "I didn't expect any of this," she said. "I just wanted to walk and breathe. I didn't think the night would turn into a lesson." Keanu nodded. "Nights do that. They show us what the day hides." She thought about the man in the hallway, about how he tried to hold himself together, about how close he was to breaking. And then she thought about Keanu kneeling beside him, picking up his clothes without saying a single pity-filled word. No judgment, no spotlight. "Just help," she spoke softly. "There was a time in my life when I thought strength meant doing everything alone. Tonight showed me something else. Sometimes strength is knowing someone is there, even if you never ask them to be." Keanu looked at her, not with pride, but with understanding. "No one is meant to walk through life completely unguarded," he said. "But people forget that until something reminds them." Sandra smiled gently. "And you reminded me." He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. The truth was already there, in the silence between them. They both knew the night was over now, not just because of the sunrise, but because the story had reached the place it was meant to reach. Not a dramatic ending, not a romantic ending, not a tragic ending, but a human one. A quiet one. A respectful one. Sandra took a breath and said, "You didn't have to follow me. You could have stayed inside, minded your own life, slept, ignored everything. But you didn't. You walked into the night because someone else might need safety. Even if they don't say it out loud," Keanu replied with the same calm truth he carried all night. "We don't have to know a person deeply to care about what happens to them. Sometimes the world just needs one more person who chooses to protect without being asked. That sentence settled into the room like a final note. They stood now. The night had ended. Their paths would soon return to normal. Schedules, filming, meetings, scenes, cameras, people, noise, everything that life demands. But there was a golden thread now, invisible yet unbreakable, made from one night and two people who understood the silent worth of kindness. Sandra walked to the door. Keanu followed her, not out of duty, but because the moment asked for a proper goodbye. She opened the door, then turned to him with a soft, sincere smile. "I thought I was alone last night," she said. Keanu answered gently. "You were alone, but you were never unsafe?" She breathed out slowly, as if releasing something she no longer needed to carry. "I won't forget that," she whispered. "You don't have to," he said. "Just pass it forward when you get the chance." That was the last line of the night. Not a promise, not an oath, just a seed, the kind of seed that turns into new kindness in someone. Elsa's story later. Sandra walked through the hallway, calm now, not guarded, not heavy. She didn't look behind her to see if he was still there. She didn't need to. The kind of protection she felt was not about footsteps. It was about presence. Keanu watched her go, then closed the door gently. He did not feel like a hero. He did not feel like he had done something extraordinary. To him, it was simple. You protect people when the world is quiet. You step in before fear arrives. You leave before praise appears. That was enough. Outside, the sun was fully up now. The night was gone. The danger was gone. But the meaning of it remained in the air like a soft echo, repeating the truth both of them now understood. Kindness does not always speak. Sometimes it walks behind you, silent, unseen, but always there, just in case the world turns dark. And sometimes, one quiet act in the dark becomes the brightest memory a person carries into the light.